There's a very big difference between a dog that does what they're told because they're afraid of you and a dog that does what they're told because they respect you. And sure, even if you went about it the more fear route, you would get the same results, and that's why some people do it, because they just honestly they don't care or they don't know any better. For me, I don't like to do it that way. I like my dog to see me as the source of all the good things they want and need in their life. I don't want them to see me as somebody they have to be afraid of and that they only do what I tell them to do because they're afraid of me. I don't like that. I don't want that from people. I don't want that from my dogs either. So a few videos back, I did a video on how to get a dog to mind you, whether you have a reward on you or not. And if you've seen that video, you should recall that one of the first things I talked about in that video was how important it is that you have a solid relationship with the dog first and foremost. Now, in that video, I went over why that's the case, but I didn't really cover how to do it. So that's what this video is about. I'm gonna go over the more practical ways to create a solid relationship with the dog based on respect. If you'd like a more detailed explanation as to why it's important to create a respectful relationship with the dog, then go watch that video. I'll put the little link thing somewhere up here. But for now, I'll give you the short version. And the really short version and to the point version is that the type of relationship you have with your dog is vital to everything you do with your dog. It permeates absolutely everything. Your day-to-day living, your training, everything. Your relationship is absolutely everything. And if you have a piss poor relationship with your dog, it's going to show in one way or another. And by respectful relationship, all I really mean is that the dog doesn't fear you. You know, the dog wants to interact with you. They're excited to see you. They feel like they're your dog. But at the same time, there's some boundaries there. The dog also knows that they can't run you over. And they don't even really want to run you over because they see you as their person. They see you as their leader and not just some other thing or person in the environment. There's something special about you. Once you have that sort of relationship with the dog, then training is much easier and it's going to be much more effective in all regards, in every way possible. All right, so next, let's talk about some of the more practical things you can do to start creating a respectful relationship with the dog. So the first one is a very simple one, very straightforward one, and that is just spending quality time with the dog. You know, just hanging out with them. You don't have to do anything fancy at first. You know, if you need to start with having the dog in a crate and just with you in the same room while you watch TV or something, or, you know, whatever, you can start there. Some dogs you have to start there. It can also be something as simple as having the dog on leash with you while you're sitting down watching TV, you know, as long as they're not jumping up all over you or all over the furniture or whatever. You know, they're not doing a ton of unwanted behavior. You can control them on a leash, then have them on leash with you while you watch TV. Or you don't even have to be watching TV. You could just be sitting down outside, you know, bird watching or chilling under a tree, you know, whatever. You don't have to do anything crazy. Just spend time with the dog. Just have them around you, have them hang out with you, and that's about all there is to it. Now, of course, quality time also plays into training time. That's still quality time. All the food rewards, training with food, playing with toys. So play, that's another way to create a bond through spending time with the dog. Just do stuff with them, right? Dogs don't understand conceptual things. All they understand is action. All they know is right here, right now. So you have to show them through action, and you have to show them right here, right now. So just doing stuff with them is how you're going to build that bond with them. So this next one plays off of spending quality time with the dog, and that is just making sure that the interactions they have with you are predominantly positive. You want the dog to create a pleasant or positive association to you and not a negative or aversive one, especially in the beginning. There's a very big difference between a dog that does what they're told because they're afraid of you and a dog that does what they're told because they respect you. Two very different things, and you can see it very clearly in how the dog behaves. And sure, even if you went about it the more fear route, you would get the same results, and that's why some people do it, because they just honestly they don't care or they don't know any better. But For me, I don't like to do it that way. I like my dog to see me as the source of all the good things they want and need in their life. I don't want them to see me as somebody they have to be afraid of, and that they only do what I tell them to do because they're afraid of me. I don't like that. I don't want that from people. I don't want that from my dogs either. So make sure your dog has a mostly positive association to you. And one of the best ways to do that is to train through mostly positive reinforcement, where you're providing food rewards, you're providing toys, you're providing stimulation, you're giving them the things that they want and need. And that, by the way, is a perfect segue into number 3, which is provide the dog things that they want and need. Be the source of those things. So think of some things that dogs want and need. They need food, they need water, they need interaction, they need stimulation. Make sure, especially in the beginning stages of training, you can kind of loosen up on this as you go along if you want to, but you don't have to. But you want to make sure your dog gets all of those things almost entirely from you, in no one and nothing else. So when it comes to food, you're putting your dog's food in a food bowl, setting it down for them and allowing them to eat, right? It's coming from you. At the very least, do that. I like to I like to feed my dogs through training. I'm kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone there. I'm getting the dog to not only interact with me, but I'm also providing them something they want and need, which is food, and it's coming directly from me. Don't just take your dog's food, put it in a food bowl, and let them eat out of it whenever they want to, and you're just there to fill it up whenever it gets low. Free feeding, I'd never recommend that for anyone or any dog, as long as there's not some medical reason as to why they need to free feed. Sometimes that is the case, but for the vast majority of dogs, if there's not a medical reason, don't free feed. That absolutely murders so many different aspects of the relationship you have with them. So at the very least, provide the food. I recommend you feed through training. And then think about play and interaction. You want the dog to get their play and interaction from you as much as you possibly can, and their stimulation. You don't want them wrestling with other dogs and getting their stimulation and their play need itched through that. Ideally, you want the dog to play and interact with you. That's how they get that need provided. So in the beginning stages of training especially, I don't allow my dogs to interact with other people or even other dogs a whole hell of a lot. I mean, if they're young puppies, I do for that true socialization period, but past that 14, 16 week mark, that dog is doing everything with me. So if it wants to play and needs some stimulation, needs some interaction, it's getting it from me through either training and or play. So we're gonna play fetch, we're gonna play tug. Those are 2 of my favorite ways to do it. And also when it comes to toys, I provide the toys to my dogs, right? Those toys don't mean anything by themselves. The toys only have meaning because the toy is the source of an interaction between me and the dog. So it's more about the relationship between me and the dog and not so much about the toy. So when it comes to toys for my dogs, I don't leave toys out. I don't have toys all over the floor. I don't have a toy basket where they can get into it and get it whenever they want. It's the same idea as the free feeding thing. I have all their toys put in a basket, but it's up high. It's up somewhere where they can't access it without me. I have to provide the toy, and then that toy only has meaning because every time I get it out, they have to play with me. You see what I'm getting at? They don't just get a toy and get to play with it on their own. They sure as hell don't get to pick out a toy whenever they want and then play with it and interact with it on their own. I provide it and I play with them with the toy. That paints a very different picture in the dog's mind as to who you are and what the toys mean. And this last one is setting boundaries. Making sure you have a clear line in the sand that the dog is not allowed to cross. Now, for most pet dogs, it's pretty straightforward. You can just kind of get onto a dog and they'll more or less fall in line. Now, every so often you'll run across a dog that is really pushing the boundaries and they're really trying to bully you. If you have a very bullheaded type dog, you have a dog that is really trying to rule the roost, then it can be a little bit trickier, and sometimes you have to go about it a different way, or you have to be more firm in your approach there. So understand that dogs don't understand verbal communication like we do. Right now you're sitting there listening to me speak to you verbally and you're understanding these concepts. Dogs do not do that. Like I said before, dogs understand action and they understand right now. And the best way to convey that to them is through body language. Body language is their language. And they can't understand language like we can, but we can communicate to them through something that they understand, which is body language. So this is kind of my roundabout way of saying, use your body language to tell them that you're unhappy with them. This effectively is a form of positive punishment. It's called social pressure. But the thing about social pressure compared to prong collars or e-collars is that the dog cannot mistake where that punishment is coming from. When it comes to prong collars and e-collars, there's a bit of a learning curve or like a transition phase where you have to teach them that that punishment is coming from you and not from anything else in the environment. Prong collars, it's a little bit easier to do that with than e-collars. E-collars are notorious for creating problems that way. That's called superstitious association. But when it comes to using your body language and making sure the dog understands it's coming from you that way, there's no mistaking it. The dog knows they messed up and you are unhappy with them by the way you are presenting yourself to them. So there's a very big difference between standing kind of open this way, where I'm not very square to you, I'm kind of soft in the body language, I'm kind of, I'm just chill. That's a very different feeling than being super square and being tall, maybe even walking over the top of you, right? That's a very different feeling. I'm sure you can even feel that through the camera, let alone in person. If you can feel that, your dog can feel that, because that's the only language they know. That's the only language they've ever known. We teach them to understand certain words by creating associations to those sounds. They don't understand words and language like we do. It's just associations to sound. But something that they clearly understand, that they innately understand, they understand through nature, is body language. So use that. If you're just chilling with your dog and they're being good, hey, loose body posture. Be very calm, chill, nice, gentle pets. They start doing something you don't like and you don't have any other way to handle that besides getting onto them, then use your body language. Get square with them. Get tall. Tower over them. Walk over them. Kind of be like, no, knock it off. Let all of that bleed out of your body language. Wait until they get it. You will see it in their body language. They will kind of be like, oh, okay, geez, all right, I get it, right? Leave it on for maybe just a few more seconds and then take it off and it's all water under the bridge and you change your body language again. It's a bit of an acting job, but that's how they understand, especially when they don't know any other commands yet, right? Because building a relationship should happen in the beginning parts of your training. It's safe to assume your dog does not understand commands as thoroughly as they're going to. So you need a way to manage them and to punish them in a way that they understand that they can learn from it and not just create a bunch of stress around it. Later, we'll add in the prong collars and the e-collars for when that's completely necessary around behaviors they understand. But until then, use something like this to get your point across to the dog whenever they're doing something you don't want them to do. Now, one thing about this that you should know is you don't want to do this to a dog that you don't know very well. If you do this to a dog that doesn't already have some base level respect for you, they could turn on you, whether it's because they're anxious and it's more of like a fear aggression response, or like I said, they're taking a shot at the title, like Mike Ritland likes to say, and just come at you directly, like, oh yeah, you don't tell me what to do, and then they just come at you. You have to make sure that you have those other components, those other elements of developing a relationship with the dog in place first. Until then, you can kind of just manage them on a leash and just deal with it. Just ignore behaviors as best you can. Once you get to that point where you are seeing that the dog sees you as the source of all things good in their life, then you can start layering that body language piece onto it. Now, even if after all of that, you still have a dog that is still trying to come at you, then that's when using more aversive approaches may be the solution. However, in my experience, that is very rare. A lot of times, all that means is that you need to become even more of a drill sergeant with the resources that you provide. You need to make sure that the dog gets absolutely nothing and does absolutely nothing without you being a part of it and without you knowing about it. First, just spend quality time with the dog. That can come in the form of just hanging out with them, just having them around you while you do something else. It can also come in the form of training with them, right? Or using food or playing with them with toys. Another point is to provide them everything they want and need. Don't allow them to get the things that they want and need without you. It comes down to food, sometimes water, not usually, but that's something you can add in there if you need it, but typically you don't. But food, play, interaction, stimulation, all of those things. Make sure it comes from you and you provide it to the dog, and it doesn't come from anyone or anything else. At least in the beginning. Once the dog's more trained, you can loosen up on that, but even then, you don't have to. Another point was making sure that you use mostly positive training experiences with the dog. You want the dog to see you as a source of good things, that you don't want them to fear you or only do things because they're afraid of you. You want them to do the things that they do because they respect you, right? And the best way to teach them that is to use lots of positive reinforcement in the beginning. So provide food, right? Provide toys. You see how all of this is kind of connected, hopefully. And then the last bit is to set very clear and consistent boundaries using your body language more than anything else, especially in the beginning. Later on, we can add in things like prong collars and e-collars, but in the beginning, you want to avoid that if you can. If you do those first three things and then layer on the body language component, more often than not, for most dogs, that will be enough to get your point across as they're learning in the beginning there. So there you go. Hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask questions in the comments. Good luck with all that, and I'll see you on the next one.